Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Living a Joyful Life Summit. I'm Alexis Moore, and I'm here with Jack Cornfield and Trudy Goodman. So, my wonderful friends, I'm going to read a little bit about you before we jump in, okay? So, here we go. And Jack holds a doctorate degree in clinical psychology, has trained as a Buddhist monk in the monasteries of Thailand, India, and Burma, and is a founding teacher of the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts, and Spirit Rock Center in California. His 14 books include A Path with Heart, A Lamp in the Darkness, After the Ecstasy, The Laundry, The Wise Heart, and No Time Like the Present, Finding Freedom, Love, and Joy Right Where You Are. And Trudy Goodman is the founding teacher of Insight LA and co-founder of the Institute for Meditation and Psychotherapy. She has taught at universities and retreat centers worldwide for over 40 years. Trudy holds a graduate degree in developmental psychology from Harvard and is one of the senior Buddhist teachers in the US. Trudy is a contributing author to Clinical Handbook of Mindfulness, Compassion and Wisdom in Psychotherapy, and Mindfulness and Psychotherapy. Oh my goodness. Wow, what a combination. It is so wonderful to be here with you today, Jack and Trudy. How are you doing?
Thank you, Alexis. We're doing great. We're happy to be here also. This is great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Alexis. And thanks to everybody who's joining. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, it's great. I'm glad the focus of our summit is about living a joyful life. There is a meditation on joy that I'd like to lead. There are a series of heart practices in the Buddhist tradition of loving kindness, of compassion, of peace and equanimity, forgiveness. Let us do the practice of joy for about 5 minutes. I invite you who are listening to find a way to settle yourself that feels comfortable and at ease, kind of graciousness of body. And when you're ready, if you're comfortable, allow your eyes to close or lower your gaze. And first, just let the body settle. Maybe take a couple of long breaths. And after the long breaths, as you settle, put a half smile on your lips. And just notice what happens. Even as you add that little bit of a smile, you breathe deeply and you add the half smile amidst it all. It's like the wise smile of the Buddha saying, yes, this is this world with its joys and sorrows. Taking your seat with an open heart and a sense of bemusement and love and joy. And now let yourself picture or remember, bring to mind someone who you care about, friend, someone where you have an easy, loving connection. And as you picture them in your mind's eye, as you remember or sense them there, you gaze at them with some kindness. Let yourself imagine their happiest times and adventures as a young child. Even if they had a hard childhood, they were still a kid and you can't stop it. Tickling, rolling around, laughing, climbing, playing with others. Picture and imagine their most joyful adventure, their happiest day or time. And let yourself smile as you see it. Because what you're seeing is still there deep in them. It's called the child of the spirit that was born in them and in you and in all of us. Inviolable. And as you look at them, whatever age they are now, let yourself whisper, may you remember your joy. May your joy fill your being. May your joy grow and increase. May you be joyful amidst it all. And notice what you feel as you sense that child of the Spirit and extend the well-wishing of joy to them. Now imagine that they could look back at you with the same kind gaze. They gaze at you, feel the connection and the warmth, and they wish the same for you. They say, whatever they might say, dear, your name, dear friend. They look at you and they say, remember your most joyful moments as a child. Let yourself picture yourself laughing, giggling, playing, tumbling, teasing. And they gaze at you and say, this is in you. This is the child of the Spirit. And no one can take it. And with a smile, they say, may you remember your joy. May your joy fill your body and heart wherever you are. May you grow in joy and well-being, happiness. May the child of the Spirit in you shine as part of all you do. And you take in these blessings from them, and then you put your hand maybe on your heart or wherever it's comfortable, and you take them in and say, they gaze at you, they want this for you, and you say, may I remember my joy. May I remember this child of the Spirit. And may the joy that cannot be taken from a human being, may this joy fill my body, heart, and mind. May it grow and spread. So there's a sweet joy in how I move and breathe and what I touch. May I be brave enough to live in joy amidst it all. And carrying this spirit of joy, know that you can recite these words and add other people and send your prayers and joy images to people all around you as you walk down the street, as you remember your friends. You can become, and you are, the carrier of the joy of life. And then you can gradually let your eyes open. And in your own sweet way, rest in the quality of joy. So how did that work for you, Alexis?
Well, first off, I just want to thank you. I'll say one thing that I noticed was as it was the as it was directed back towards me, and I was getting the encouragement from the person who I imagined, who is my sister, who I hope listens to this because she knows that she's my person that I think of in these, or I want her to know. And and as you know, I was receiving that encouragement to remember my joy, and specifically within childhood. You know, at first I noticed a little like resistance or hesitation or even a little bracing because I was like, oh, okay, going back to childhood can sometimes the first thing that is accessible isn't always the joy.
Yes.
And so with that encouragement though, I noticed that the guidance to allow it to increase. It's like instead of that experience where a childhood memory that's negative is remembered and then it links to all these other negative ones, it was kind of having the opposite happen. So it started off with remembering like playing video games with my sister. And then it was able to go back a little younger. It went to like, oh, we used to play blocks together, you know, and like, oh, what about when we went on the slip and slide, you know? And it just started kind of happening in this other direction. I was like, whoa. And so, yeah, that just felt really sweet to kind of access those really simple experiences and actually kind of feel it increase. Yeah. And there's something about, wow, the bravery to do it. Um, can you maybe speak a little bit more to that? Like, what is the bravery aspect of that?
Yeah, I think the bravery aspect to me, it means it's sort of like what you described. Like first your mind went to the thoughts or memories that maybe weren't so pleasant, and then there can be a whole cascade of those. And to me, the bravery is acknowledging those, not trying to paste a smiley face on those experiences, but those are real too. And then we have this superpower of our consciousness, of our awareness, that we can direct it where we want. We're not taught to use it so often. That's why mindfulness and these practices are so important. But you can then choose where to incline your heart. And for example, with this meditation, Jack was leading us toward inclining the heart toward the joyful memories. And I think that the bravery, it's a kind of spiritual courage, really, or psychological courage, comes from being able to include both. People, for example, who need to be on antidepressant medications, they often report, yes, that medication sort of helps uplift the painful, depressed feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, etc. But that they also kind of mute the joy and the enthusiasm. We need to be able to open to both. And that's, to me, where the bravery comes in. It also takes a certain amount of guts to say, I choose to be joyful, even though there are these harsh and incredibly painful realities of what it's like to be human beings in this world, right? But I'm choosing to take the path of joy because that's more inspiring. It gives me energy. And when I delight more in life, I feel I can be more of benefit to others. Like then you really do have something positive to radiate to others. And so, how do you generate these joyful feelings? The practices, like the one that Jack led, by choosing to take pleasure and delight in the happiness of other people, because then there's so much joy available to you. Maybe your own life isn't that joyful right now. Maybe you've been sick or whatever. You've had a loss of a loved one, or it's not that joyful right now. But you can also take delight in the happiness of others. It's available to us. We can share in it. We're all interconnected and interdependent that way. So to me, the bravery comes in a way daring to be joyful. I don't know what you were thinking about it, but that's what comes to me.
and it's so helpful, and it's bringing up a couple different like questions, associations, because earlier, Jack, you had mentioned something about like the moral, something you didn't, I don't think you said moral obligation.
That's what he
I
said.
It
did.
Yeah.
was that. Okay. And so I'm curious, like how this kind of cultivation and practice um, is a or helps us to be more resilient to deal with the stuff that's actually really difficult, like climate change, and we're dealing with racism. We're dealing with these systems that can feel so big and sometimes, crushing or oppressive. So how does this actually make us resilient? That it allows us to face life's difficulties. Because I heard you say this, Trudy. It's not like a bypass. It's
Right.
a I heard a kind of like resilience within that. So could you all speak a little bit to that piece?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the bypass is pretending on some level, pretending to be happier or more joyful than we actually are. You know, it's like sometimes people practice affirmations. You look in the mirror and say, I'm happy and I'm joyful when you actually aren't. And to me, that's not so helpful. That what we need to do is tell ourselves the truth of what we're feeling in any given moment. And when we're fully present, when you're fully present with what you're feeling, even if it's sadness, that quality of being present connects you with the aliveness of that moment.
Mm.
Like nature, everything's alive. Why do we feel peaceful in nature? Because it's just life in the form of a tree, a leaf, a flower, a bird. And so being present with experience like that, I think, is a doorway to move from experiences and emotions that may be actually difficult into appreciation of the life that's in them, the aliveness that's in them. And then that is uplifting. That brings a certain kind of confidence that we can work with whatever life brings us. And confidence is an element of joy.
Wow. 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 So I'm hearing that being able to be present and connect with whatever is the experience in the moment. So it might be sadness, or it might be anger, or it might be frustration, but being in the present, connecting with that um, allows an experience of kind of aliveness. And then there's a sense of trust, of ability to kind of be with the experience.
Yes.
There's a kind of stability. And then that sounds like that would support with being with resilience to then go face some of the things that are a lot more challenging, rather than, I guess, rather than feel like, oh my gosh, it's going to overwhelm me. So I can't even like look over there.
I have to avoid it. I have to deny it, something like
Right.
that.
Okay. Right.
And there's a kind of, with that presence, it's a kind of love to be present with things, to get that close to experience, to be that willing to be close to our experience, intimate with it. That's a kind of act of love and appreciation of just life in the form of this and that, sadness, happiness, joy, sorrow, frustration, rage, fear, confidence, right? All of it.
Jack, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah. It's also really important to understand that I'll talk about it from the Buddhist teachings, the Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth is that life has suffering. Everybody knows that. But suffering isn't the end of the story. It's the first noble truth. And then it has its causes: greed, hatred, ignorance, fear, those kind of things that cause suffering. Then there's a path to the end of suffering, which is attention, what Trudy's describing, love, that suffering is not the end of the story, and it's not who we really are. Martin Luther King talked about turning the fatigue of despair into the buoyancy of hope. And he did that in the face of church bombings and all kinds of terrible things. But he knew he represented that the human heart is much bigger than that, that the heart is big enough to hold all of what Trudy is describing, the ocean of tears and the unbearable beauty of the world. And then Einstein put it another way. He said, if you can drive safely while kissing a girl, you're simply not giving the kiss the attention it deserves. So, so this is like, doubling down on what Trudy said, that there is something about the willingness to come close and pay attention and see the light in everything. Because even in the difficult places, there's light behind the eyes of beings, and there's every tree leaf is in a way is shining. We all know that. We all know those moments walking in the high mountains or making love or, listening to a transporting music or going to a great cathedral or something, that the world starts to shine. The shining is there. And again, this isn't like spiritual bypass, but it's shifting and seeing the beauty around us. Eduardo Galeano, great Latin poet, wrote, he said, the church says the body is a sin, right? Science says the body is a machine. Business, the marketplace says the body is good for business. And the body says, I am a fiesta. So the lenses, we become the loving awareness that can see all of the world with its 10,000 joys and sorrows. And we step back and rest in that big heart, which is spacious and honorable, brave, if you will, to allow it all. And in the end, to know that the end of the story is actually our connectedness. And as Trudy said, our love.
Mm. Wow, honoring and brave to allow it all. So, and this makes me want to maybe take this conversation in a slightly different direction. Because when you said honoring and brave to allow it all, I thought, yes, that makes sense. And at the same time, I think that in, intimate relationships, then I can know that it's brave for me to honor and allow it all, but it kind of just goes out the window sometimes because I'm like, well, but I really need you to not be that way. Like I can honor and allow it all except for this. Come on. Like this needs, like that's where my brain can go within family relationships, within intimate relationships. That's the place where it can be really challenging. And so I'm curious, for you all, what insights can you maybe offer us about sustaining joy and harmony within relationships and long-term relationships, drawing from your experience as a couple?
First, to normalize something, and then Trudy may add.
I will add. I will doubtless
I know
add.
you will doubtless add. So remember that even Buddha and Jesus had trouble when they went home to their families. Okay, so this is the truth, right? We're human beings, and the closer we are, in some way, Trudy and I have been working with activists from around the world because they're really great at doing the save the rainforest or stop the war, but then it all gets bottled up inside them. They don't know how to tend themselves the way they want to tend the peacemaking or the rainforest. One of these activists said, and relationships are scary. She said, I think I'd rather be in prison than start a relationship. And it was like shocking and funny, even when it came out of her mouth. But what she's talking about, because this is the real deal and the real territory. And rather than give any, that's Trudy can talk about, what things are helpful. I just want to say that, first of all, Trudy's a joyful being, and people just feel it and know it. I've never felt more accepted and loved in my entire life than from this woman. And it changed my DNA somehow to have somebody who loved me that much. And I know when my daughter was, thinking about getting married and did to this great guy, and my question was, does he adore you? You know, and when that's there, when you receive that, the stuff, yeah, you work through it. Anyway, Trudy.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel it's like I was talking earlier about joy in nature and just in the fullness of life, right? The fullness of all of it. And I will say it really helps to be older. I feel I have. I mean, I joke Jack is my favorite of all my husbands because yeah, extensive experience of really trying to make things work that were not workable ultimately. So I know a lot about that. And it actually gives me a kind of, I think all the things that you go through, whether it's with your siblings or your colleagues or your intimate relationships, it gives you a kind of, again, that confidence, that appreciation that you can get very disconnected from each other, but somehow stay connected through the disconnection. And I feel like that's something that having some commitment helps with, like either you decide to, make a long-term partnership commitment, or you decide you're going to stick out this job and this team and you're going to make it work, or, in families, well, hopefully, unless it's a very harmful or abusive situation, you have the family ties, the holidays, the things that help you come back to each other so that don't get too alarmed by the disconnections that happen. We take them so personally, but life is a roller coaster. Relationships are too. And, I love the image of the Ferris wheel because you ride up and you're in this glorious aerial view. You have the beautiful bird's eye perspective of all life, and then you come down again. And yeah, so having some sense of things are always changing. But again, it's what is my heart's intention? Where am I directing my attention and intention?
Mhm.
And I'm directing it towards staying connected, toward remembering the love. And then for each person, how you do that is different. What brings people, pleasure, it's different. We're all wired differently that way. And yeah, I could talk a lot about that. But I think that trust that you can stay connected through times of disconnection, and that the bottom line is, what do you really want? I used to work a lot with couples as a therapist, and I would often ask them, would you rather be right or would you rather be close? And sometimes letting go, making compromises. I mean, all the things, these are just things that everybody knows intellectually. But then I think just having your heart's intention and coming back to that and doing the things that help you come back to that you enjoy together.
When I perform wedding ceremonies, which I don't really do much anymore, one of the things that I will do before they take their vows is I'll say, when you go into a used car lot, in the windows of the used car, there's a sign that says, as is, right? I say, I want you to gaze at each other, choosing this, and I want you to realize that to make this work, you accept and love this person as is? Because we also get in our mind to kind of, whether it's our own self-improvement or the improvement of others, there's some way in which this is the joy part. There's a secret beauty in everybody. And if we can see that secret beauty behind the eyes, yeah, they get lost, they get angry, and so do we. But there's something so much deeper. And when we see that see the child of the spirit, see the secret beauty, then the rest, as Trudy is saying, can be held and still stay in the field of joy and love.
And I think when Jack said child of the spirit, that brought to mind something also really important, which is to remember we carry all these different ages of our development inside of us. And sometimes I'll get really mad at Jack and I'll express it in, let's just say, not the most mature way. And he'll just say to me, well, so how old are you right now? And it makes me so angry when he says that. It makes me even madder, but it's true. And sometimes being able to recognize with each other in a variety of settings that there are times when some childhood pattern, gets triggered. And this is why it's so great to get to know yourself. And this is why I really want to make a pitch for getting to know yourself as well as you can through meditation, through therapy, through, I don't know, stretching yourself in different ways that put you up against your growing edges. Because when you get to know yourself, you can start to, oh, okay, this is me. This is a pattern that I have of taking this personally, or of going back to a certain age and responding from that place instead of my more mature self. So being able to appreciate the children inside of each of us too, that we're not always operating from our most developed self,
Right, right. And, first off, I just want to say, Jack, thank you for sharing that about Trudy. That was so beautiful to hear. That really was so beautiful to hear.
She was the added charm of being true.
And I do want to say, Jack said that. And for me, to be with a man who is 100% trustworthy, who actually walks his talk, who actually is the way he teaches, it's so healing. And I appreciate it.
On a good day.
Well, I really appreciate the way that you're both, just expressing about this right now. It just feels very like human and real. And I'm really grateful for that. And one of the questions that came up just now, Trudy, since you mentioned trust, and I'm curious about your experience, maybe both of your experience of trust in relationships. Is it something that you feel happens right away? Is it something that grows? I'm a little curious about that.
Well, if it happens right away or grows, I think a lot depends on sort of your conditioning from your how you were brought up. For example, I had a pretty nice parents. I was lucky that way. I mean, everyone has their neuroses, but they were nice people. And my dad was a very trustworthy guy. And so I was very trusting always, right away, quite unguarded, and didn't have sometimes the discernment to be able to see, actually, this is not a trustworthy person or a trustworthy situation. And that's part of why I had so many marriages. But honestly, for me, the trust now, you have to take a risk at the beginning, but then you can take a risk and keep your eyes open. And I think for me, watching how somebody acts and what they do is more important than listening to what they say. I'll just say that piece. And it's a big topic.
Yeah, I want to change the lens or the level in answering the question about trust.
Yeah,
Because, you get in relationships and then you get betrayed. If I asked who's listening, how many of you have been betrayed? Every hand would go up, whether it's in a relationship or something. It's part of our human experience. What you learn from what Trudy suggested of getting to know yourself, practicing mindfulness meditation and other such related trainings is you get to sit with your grief and your longing and your love and your failures and your desire and the beauty in you. You get all of that, right? And what you start to learn is that you can trust the awareness itself. You can trust who you are is actually awareness born into this body, and that the heart is big enough. The great heart of loving awareness is who you are. Loving awareness is your nature. And you go through your ups and downs, and you have your losses and you have your triumphs, but you start to trust something much bigger, that you're part of this web of life, and you are actually the field of awareness that says, wow, now let me have a Trudy and a Jack experience. It's playing, in some way. And that's a very different level of trust. That's kind of the great trust. And we know it. There are blessed moments that happen in our life where we can see a kind of perfection in the world, even with all the sorrows and tears, that birth requires death. You can't have one without the other. That day and night and joy and sorrow, they're woven together and you can't separate them. But who you are is this field of awareness and love. And that kind of trust, when you bring it into relationship and all your stuff comes up, which it does, mine too. Oh, it came up like big time when it came out of the monastery. I was so peaceful. I was this great peaceful monk. And then I got into an intimate relationship, and all the old patterns, they were waiting like old clothes. I thought I hadn't dealt with them. They were just waiting. But because I had that space of awareness, and we learn that in meditation, it's okay. And you bring a kind of love to it.
Wow.
Gratitude sometimes. Okay, this is what I'm given to learn how to love more deeply, to learn how to trust more.
And Trudy, what you were saying earlier about developing these qualities. So developing the quality of awareness, developing the quality of joy. Gosh, I'm trying to think of a question there. It just sounded like almost, Jack, with what you were saying, that developing a quality of awareness or joy, almost being able to trust that, being able to trust that developing the quality will provide a support to what will come up in relating with other people in an intimate relationship.
Exactly. And the thing is, Alexis, that's so important, and this comes from getting to know yourself deeply. You don't have to create these qualities and invent them. They are part of who we are. They are innate to us. The capacity to love, to feel compassion and care about others, to feel joy, to be peaceful and calm and at ease. I mean, these are all qualities of our own hearts and minds that are innate to us. And they get covered over by our conditioning and our fears and our traumas and, big experiences that are not of love and joy. But to me, that's the good news, especially the good news of Buddhist practice. I think of it as original blessing instead of original sin, that we are blessed with the goodness of our hearts. And no matter how covered over that may be, it is possible to heal. It is really possible to heal. So that's a joyful message.
It's incredibly hopeful. Yeah, that's incredibly hopeful. And this is our last few minutes here, y'all. So in these last few minutes, then, yeah, what are some final things that we'd like to share with anyone listening to support them in living a joyful life?
You're good at recapping things.
Well, I really love the note that we're ending on from Trudy, that in some way, spiritual practice, psychological work, you can feel like you're developing. I'm getting more patient, which is very slow for me, but it's happening, or I'm getting more whatever. But the truth is that we know these inside already. They are who we are. And in some way, you're not trying to get somewhere. You're trying to come back and be where you are with all its, I think Oscar Wilde said, the tainted glory of humanity, right? This is what it is. And to love it, actually to love it all, which is where the joy comes.
And I'd like to add that it's really important to have a sense of humor in this life. If you want to live a joyful life, to be able to see the absurdity of things and to laugh at them, not in a making fun of way, but just seeing, oh my gosh, look at us humans, look what we get into, look what we do. Um, the great activist and clown Wavy Gravy famously said, if you don't have a sense of humor, it's not very funny.
The French philosopher Guillaume Apollinaire said, now and then it's good to pause in our pursuit of happiness and just be happy. That's a radical statement, especially in a culture where it's always somewhere else.
Great. Wow. Oh, wow. This has been incredibly helpful. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. And would you like to end with sharing us your greatest sources of joy for each of you?
Well, it's many of them. A 5-year-old grandson, who's total little boy. Yes, he's got dolls, he's got whatever. If we're walking down the street and there is a backhoe and a digger there, he will stand and look at it like he's in love all day long, just watching it. It's just like in his DNA somewhere back there. So he's a source of joy for sure. And then we have a couple of other grandchildren who are in college and having those wild, wonderful, and difficult, all of those things that we all live through at that age. And somehow we get to relive that beauty, that through the eyes of these grandchildren, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, the kids, the grandkids, each other. Jack is a source of joy for me, and I love nature. I actually really love life, and think the more that we're open and present, then we can see the joy that's sometimes hidden in things.
Oh, good. I will definitely be taking away this image of a used car just as is. And that's that just as is. There's something about that that's really speaking to me. So I'm gonna take that away with me today. Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you to Eric and everybody who's helping with this summit. And probably folks know who are listening. It's also really connected with the rebirth of Insight LA and all the beautiful things that are offered there in Los Angeles, Trudy Center. So for everyone who's participating, we're really appreciative and happy and grateful.
And I wanted to say that too, that, Eric's generosity in putting this on and this gathering of so many wonderful friends that I've known sort of in my meditation life, in my psychotherapy life over the decades, the gathering of all of these folks who are willing to offer their time and their teaching to support Insight LA is really it just touches my heart. Our nonprofits are precious and they are not exempt from the ups and downs of life. And so to see this sort of rallying of support is just gives me so much joy.
Mm. And how can we learn more about both of you and your work?
I have a website. It's trudygoodman.com and insightla.org. And I have a Sunday meditation group. It's California time, 10 to 11:30. and everybody's welcome. It's on Zoom, so wherever you are, please come join us.
And can they sign up for that on the Insight LA website? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. InsightLA.org. Wonderful. Thank you. And Jack?
jackcornfield.com. It's so funny, I've done all these nonprofits and built them so forth. Now I'm doing jackcornfield.com. And it's just playing. I mean, the whole thing is a dance, but there's meditations and teachings and classes. And I also run with a colleague, Tara Brock, we run this amazing worldwide teacher training for people who are beginning to learn to teach mindfulness, and people absolutely love it. So all kinds of things there.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Alexis.